I'm Dr. Erica Bove, and welcome to the Love and Science podcast. I'm your host, and also the founder of Love and Science, Thriving Through Infertility. I'm so excited you're here today. With over a decade of experience helping thousands of women just like you, I empower professional women to build their families with confidence and compassion. Let's dive in. Hello, my loves, and welcome back to the Love and Science podcast. I am so deeply honored to have Dr. Robyn Tiger with us today. She is a friend and a colleague and an absolutely amazing human. Let me introduce her to do her credentials justice. So Dr. Robyn Tiger is a double board certified physician in diagnostic radiology and lifestyle medicine, and she's also a trauma-informed mind-body expert. You know, we love this at Love and Science. She is also the founder of Stress Free MD, where she uniquely combines her trainings in medicine, yoga therapy, meditation, and life coaching to teach physicians a whole person approach to relieve stress while increasing both lifespan and health span. I learned this new word, health span, recently. I'm a big fan. Her innovative coaching, courses, presentations, retreats, podcasts, and book focus on creating effective behavior changes in the key topics of stress relief, nutrition, exercise, sleep, social connection, and nature, while cultivating physical, mental, and emotional well-being and resilience. Dr. Robyn, it is so fabulous to have you. Thank you for being a guest.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Erica. I'm so happy to be here today.
Oh, I know. And, I am just so inspired by your journey. I do believe, like your book, right? Stress is optional. I really do believe that. And I think that when we start to understand an integrated approach like you've created, I actually think we can start to realize how that pathway is possible. And it's multimodal. It takes somebody like you, a guru who really has walked the walk yourself. But I think even something as complex as the fertility journey, we can sort of start to dismantle and start to understand the sources of stress and start to feel better along the way. I'd love to talk about some of your ideas in just a few minutes. How does that sound?
Sounds amazing. Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. So first of all, though, I would love to understand your journey as a physician and a coach. Tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today with your practice.
Yeah, so many years ago, and it might be about 15 to 20 years at this point, I was setting the stage. I was married to an amazing, still am, amazing man, had two young children, was working as a radiologist in a busy practice, and was very involved in my community, very involved in the hospital, very involved in all things. And I noticed I started developing a lot of symptoms and symptoms that seemed really disconnected at the time. And from the top down, they included migraine headaches with this intractable vomiting, which I'd never experienced before, tinnitus, vertigo. I had bleeding gums. I mean, as a physician, you're thinking, okay, I'm trying to connect the dots. What does that have to do with anything? Right?
Mm-hmm.
My body hurt. I felt like the Tin Man from the Wizard of Oz, just, oil, just like wanted someone just to spray stuff and get me out of this, concrete container that I felt like I was living in. I couldn't digest any of my food, no matter what I ate. My abdomen would distend. I had pain. My bowel habits were all over the place. I never knew what was going to happen. Constipation, diarrhea. I mean, it was just a mess. And I
Wow.
had really bad reflux, like chest pain, burning reflux. Like, is this just reflux or is this, cardiac related? Like, what is going on?
Mm-hmm.
And a really scary symptom included paresthesias, these intermittent paresthesias where I would lose sensation in my hands and my feet and the left side of my back. And my hands in particular was terrifying. I'd be driving my car, I couldn't feel the steering wheel. I would
Mm-hmm.
be cutting up vegetables for salad, I couldn't feel the knife. I would be in a breast biopsy holding the biopsy gun. And I would be right there at the lesion, and my tech would say, "Hey, Dr. Tiger, you're right there." And I'd be just sort of making excuses like, yeah, I'm just checking around, just, taking another look. And the truth was, I couldn't feel my hands on the biopsy gun. Like, I couldn't even push
Wow.
the button until this thing passed and it would just come and go. And so there's so many physical symptoms. These are the most dominant that I'm describing. as they developed one by one, I started seeing a lot of our colleagues, right? So I reached out to neurologists, I reached out to gastroenterologists, I reached out to all types of therapists, right? So I had PT, OT, acupuncture, massage, all these things, of course, after seeing my internist initially. And I just wasn't getting better. And I had a pile of pills. I was taking,
Mm,
as we say, a pill for an ill. I had a big pile of pills. I was taking them every day, and I was just feeling worse.
mm,
And, it got really, really scary. I started to just think the unimaginable became, is this imaginable? And I started to have really dark thoughts like, oh, I can't take another day like this. Like, I cannot wake up and spend another day like this. Not that I was planning anything, but I just thought
mhm,
that it would feel better if I didn't have to be in so much pain and suffer so
mhm,
much. Labs were normal, imaging studies were normal, nothing was showing up as anything. And
mm,
so I thought, okay, well, Western medicine is incredible. We are Western medicine trained physicians. But I had to look outside the box, right? Because along the course of all this, I lost three physician friends to suicide.
mm.
And so,
Three friends, Robyn.
three,
Oh, I'm
one
so
from
sad.
college. Thank you. I know. One from college, one from medical school,
Mm,
and one was and was also my residency, and one from the practice where I was working.
oh,
And so I just had this
mm,
vision of this road, and it had this fork in it. And I was saying to myself, okay, like you are heading down this road here, and that's not the road you want to be heading down.
mm,
What about this other road? And how do you get there?
mhm.
Because I didn't want to be heading down that first road. And I was also seeing a mental health care professional who was lovely, but it just wasn't helping.
Right. We're doing all the things, but we're not
All the
well.
things, all the
Yeah, yeah,
things.
yeah.
I'm doing everything I thought I was supposed to be doing.
Mm,
And so we've got negative labs, negative imaging studies, therapy's not helping, you know, therapy with traditional Western medicine trained physicians, therapy with mental health care professionals, therapy with,
right.
allied health. I mean, I had so
All the
many on my
meds. Yeah,
team,
everything.
all the
Yeah,
meds.
yeah.
And I'm like, what now? Like, what do I
Mhm,
do? And I was exercising a lot. I was training for a lot of races. I was eating what I thought was pretty healthy. And I couldn't figure out what the heck's going on. Like, what do I do to get down this other road? Which seemed completely confusing and I had no real map as to how to get there. But I started to hear more and more about things like yoga, things like meditation, things that I rolled my eyes at a lot because I'm a gym rat. I run races, I work out all the time, and that's for those weird people down the hall doing these strange things. And I don't know what they're doing, but
Yeah.
as a radiologist, I can't imagine them twisting their bodies into these weird shapes, and it didn't make sense to me, right? And weird
That
music and weird
resonates a
clothes,
lot.
and
Yeah, it
right,
resonates a lot.
yeah.
Like yoga isn't exercise. I actually exercise. Like we have this sense of pride about what is exercise. I totally feel that. Yeah.
And, we turn our nose up what we don't understand, right? And we have a lot of
Right.
preconceived notions, and people listening might be also thinking some of the things that I thought, spandex, weird music, weird positions, strange people behind locked doors, who knows what they're doing. I had all kinds of things in my brain
Yep.
I thought I knew, and I'd be on the treadmill looking at those people going down the hall into that room where they closed the door, and I'm like, I'm not one of them. But I kept seeing this advertisement, right? And it was like this Yoga 101 series. And I have to say that my Dr. Brain, my left brain, my egotistical brain, liked the fact that it was being taught by this anthropology professor from the local university who also owned the studio. So my brain was satisfied that she wasn't some Molly Moonbeam weirdo,
Mm-hmm.
that she was authentic, that she was real,
Mm-hmm.
and I was at rock bottom. And so after seeing this thing advertised a million times, I finally signed up. And I remember that day, Erica, so clearly. I can't tell you how many cases I read. I can't tell you how many biopsies I did, how many procedures I did. Came home exhausted after waking up exhausted. And I fed my kids, I bathed my kids, I hand them over to my husband, and I drove to this studio for a 7:30 p.m. class, rolling my eyes, tail between my legs, thinking I could be doing a million other things, emptying the dishwasher, folding the laundry, prepping for my cases for the next day, talking to my husband, like, what am I doing? And after this very first session, this one session, I wasn't tired. I
Mm.
felt calm. My mind was clear. My body didn't hurt. And I didn't know what happened.
Mm. Wow, that's so powerful.
Yeah. So that was the beginning of me being able to see this other path. And this was a time when we didn't have internet, that we had books. And
Mhm.
so I went home and I started looking through my books, and I went to the library and I started researching the medical literature, because that's what we do, because our left brain needs things grounded in science. And as I continued to take classes and as I began to feel better and the symptoms started to go away, actually,
Wow.
they eventually all went away over time. I came to understand that the one diagnosis that nobody was making was a whopping case of chronic stress.
Mhm.
And that as I learned through several different ways, and this was just the beginning of that journey, to by starting by regulating my nervous system, my sympathetic nervous system, and coming into homeostasis, I could decrease my cortisol levels, decrease the cytokines, all the inflammation in my body, which was wreaking havoc and causing all these symptoms, and feel better.
Mm. Wow, that is so powerful. So it's interesting to me that you kind of went to this thing like kicking and screaming because you were like, what am I doing? But something in you knew that there was something there for you, right? And, I think sometimes we don't have to understand things for them to work. And if it's working, do more of that thing. It's hard though as physicians because we're like we want to like understand all the mechanisms, but I think that was your intuition really saying, okay, this is what I need, more of this. And then you got the confirmation that your symptoms started improving and even falling away. And so, right, then you're like, okay, well, there is something wrong. And this is my way down that path. That's so beautiful, Robyn. Really. Thank you for sharing that.
No,
Yeah.
thank
So
you.
then what? Then what happened, right? Because I would imagine you're
Yeah.
still working your busy job, you're still doing all the things. Like what shifted for you to kind of go more in this direction?
Well, what happened is, as we are physicians, we love learning, right? And so we're lifelong learners. And so we call it the practice of medicine, right? So we're
Yeah.
always learning. And so what do? We study the thing that we want to learn more about. So initially I went into yoga teacher training thinking that I wasn't going to teach anybody anything. I just wanted to understand the thing that was making me feel better. And it was there that I learned about the field of yoga therapy. So, for people listening, yoga teacher training is a 200-hour base level of training. Yoga therapy is at least 1,000 hours over 3 years. And I saw it as allowing me to doctor in a different way. I
Mm.
understood that it could help people with many symptoms, illnesses, and diseases, those that I was experiencing, stress being the umbrella that was causing them. And then people with cancer, people with MS, people who have had trauma, so on, veterans, and so on. And so it was really exciting for me to think that I could learn more deeply how to help different populations. And so I went on to become certified in yoga therapy. And during that 3 year certification, I learned about meditation and a specific type of meditation called iRest, which was created for our military. And that was so profoundly helpful for me that I spent another 3 years getting certified in that meditation. Because
Mm.
although it was created for veterans, it was really under the umbrella of trauma informed, it was secular, it was evidence based. And it not only allowed us to identify what was going on, but process the experiences. So that was the next piece. And as you know, well, we have our thoughts, right? So as I began to really understand the human body and I became really an expert in working with the human body, I realized that I myself was having a lot of issues with my own thoughts. And so having a coach that really helped me I went on to study how to help others. And so I became certified
Mm,
as a life coach and really kind of putting the whole mind and the body together as one.
mhm,
Along that path, I learned about the field of lifestyle medicine. And it was very
mhm,
exciting to me because I had never heard about this until I actually moved to Asheville, North Carolina, and met physicians who were specialty board trained. This is a real board certification, a real specialty of medicine where they focus on behaviors to prevent, reverse, and sometimes even treat symptoms, illnesses, and diseases. And behaviors, including stress management, including what we eat, moving our bodies, sleeping, connecting with others, and so on. It was very, very exciting for me to see that there was an actual medical specialty that focused on the things that I was doing and more. And I felt like a kid in a candy shop, and I felt like I came home.
mm.
And so that really was my entryway into learning about lifestyle medicine. And then when I was connected to the education department through a local physician who said, they need to know about you, they invited me to join their faculty. And they said,
Oh, wow.
yeah, it was amazing. They said we're really really strong on the other pillars, but stress is something that we could use help with. And would you co-author our board review manual on the section on stress? And so that was my entryway into lifestyle medicine and becoming board certified and co-authoring the board review manual and next week becoming fellow. So very very excited for that and it's been a
Congratulations.
journey.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I love how you've integrated your like just love of learning and your identity as a physician and your finding these life-saving truly modalities that have healed you. And then, it's like I was thinking about this myself. I believe I was on my way to my own yoga class this morning when I was like meditating on that concept of the wounded healer, right? Like we can heal the world truly where we've been most wounded. And when we have received the salve, the medicine, the real stuff, right? The yoga is the real, the meditation is the real, all of these modalities combined to nurture us and bring us back to life, really, like almost like a plant that needs revival. Like, then we get to go and do that for the world. And that's exactly what you've done. So, thank you. When you say you uniquely do that, I believe that is true. So, thank you for sharing your journey. It's so inspiring.
Well, thank you. I come back to that make your mess your message,
Yeah,
right? And
right, right,
so
right.
we can either wallow in it as the victim or we can actually help other people from what we've learned and really come out as the victor. And that's really where I try to put my energy.
Yeah, it's beautiful because I mean, to your point before, you really can go down two paths. There's not really a neutral ground. You can either say, I'm the victim, like poor me, and then we give away all of our power unbeknownst to ourselves, or we can say, how can I transform this suffering, right, for the world? And that's what you've done. So thank you for that. Before we were recording, you had mentioned that your own journey of building your family was not quite so straightforward. And I was wondering, on the same theme of sharing our struggles to help other people who may then feel less alone, I was wondering if you'd be willing to share sort of how you built your family and some of the blocks along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So from the outside, you know, we see people from the outside looking in, right? And so we see the beautiful home, we see the amazing couple, we see the beautiful children, but what we don't see is the in between, and that sometimes there were struggles that,
Mhm.
unbeknownst to you, the individuals that you're looking at and you're thinking are perfect, um, experienced. And for my, I have two beautiful, healthy children. I will start with that. But there was a pregnancy in between that didn't go so well.
Mm,
I was very fortunate to conceive right away, my son, my first child. And, I waited until I passed my boards. I was afraid that I would be really sick during pregnancy. My mother was very sick. And I wanted to pass my written oral boards in radiology. That was what I put my foot down. Um, at that time, we didn't have computers. And so you received a letter in the mail if you passed or not. If the letter was thin, you passed. If the letter was thick, you had a reapplication form in there and you had to do it
Mm.
again. My husband, who's 4 years older than me, was really wanting to start a family, and I was very specific about, needing to wait to have that board certification complete and under my belt. And the day that that letter came, he was standing outside holding it and like, now. Like, we are having a baby now. And we tried once, we got pregnant, and he was disappointed that it was just one time. We have a beautiful son. I get pregnant again. Everything seems to be the same way. I'm the sickest pregnant person. I'm vomiting. I'm nauseous. I think it's the same. My best friend from medical school, who's a high risk OB, is doing a research study, and she wanted me in that study. And I needed to check the length of the fetus to determine if the fetus was large enough for me to enter the study. It had to be, I think, a certain number of millimeters. I remember exactly what they were studying: the nuchal fold, the nuchal thickness, and associated with the chromosomal abnormalities. So one Sunday evening, my husband and my then little toddler running around go over to the office, the radiology office. I pull out the transducer just to check the length of the fetus, and I put the transducer on, and what do I see but an occipital encephalocele? I see a large cystic pouch coming off the base of the fetus's neck, skull,
And you're a radiologist, right?
and
So
I'm a
you knew what you were looking,
radiologist.
so it's like that's like the worst case
So
scenario. Yeah.
I'm, and I remember saying to my husband, Eric, come here, because I just, like, I couldn't breathe.
Mm.
And he came over and he looked at it, and I looked at him, and we both knew exactly what it was. We had a neural tube defect. Um, this was not sustainable for life. This was going to be also potentially damaging to my own health with all the complications that could incur from this particular defect. And it was extremely upsetting. We were about 10 weeks, and so at 10 weeks we can see, arms, legs, fingers, toes, all the
Mm.
phalanges, everything, dancing around, and this cystic structure hanging off the base of the skull and the neck. So the next day, I contact my BFF and I tell her what's going on. She said, "We'll check you." Of course, it's like, maybe it's not that. We
Mm.
go into Jefferson the next day. The ultrasound tech puts the transducer on. She takes one look at me. She takes the transducer off. I knew immediately what was going on. And so the high risk OB came in. He was so sweet, and he and I had a conversation. We're both in agreement that that this was something that needed to be um, terminated for both the health of the fetus, which was not going to be sustainable, as well as my own maternal health, and set me up the very next day for D&E. Um, and that was going to be in the outpatient surgery center. We're in the hospital where I was on staff. The next day, I get a call saying that they have canceled my case because it was against religious principles.
Mm.
And this was not even a religious hospital. This was not based in any type of religion at all. It was a very neutral secular hospital, right?
Mm.
So it's bad enough that you have the trauma of identifying the I diagnosed my own fetus's neural tube defect. I knew exactly what it was. I had to go through the entire, you know, steps of scheduling this D&E, and of course, my heart is just breaking, and my mommy brain is like having heartstrings pulled. My doctor brain is like, this is what you need to do. And then I was denied the procedure. That was just so incredibly upsetting. And my cervix is dilated. I already have them already. So they
My
had to
goodness.
transfer me to the hospital where they put me in an alias, and my incredibly amazing MFM, came and consoled me and took great care of me. And I went through the procedure. And there was a lot of sorrow, a lot of loss, a lot of grief, and a lot of stress that went through it, feeling all the feels. Again, different
Yeah.
layers of being. The mommy feelings, the physician feelings, the left brain. I mean, all of the things.
Right.
And I knew though that we desperately wanted to have another child. And so what do we do? What happens when you fall off the horse? You got to get back on the horse. What happens when you fall in the water? You got to get back in, right? So we as soon as we were allowed to try again, and I was terrified and so full of fear. We did. We tried
Mm.
again. I think this time it took a few times, and we were able to conceive successfully. And we were able to, at that time, the very brand new 3D ultrasound was just coming out. The ultrasound machine was the size of an entire room. And there was one radiologist they brought in from Brazil, I believe, into Jefferson. They flew him over here, and he was the only person doing this particular ultrasound, the size of the room. And I had this fetus scan upside down, backwards, and forwards in 3D multiple times, just checking for everything because I was very
Yeah.
anxious and stressed and fearful. Didn't see
Yeah.
anything, and I'm grateful to say that we had a beautiful, lovely baby girl. And so,
Mm.
for anyone listening, I want you to understand that you're not alone on your fertility journey. Sometimes it happens, I call it the sandwich pregnancy, right? The one in between. And it doesn't mean that it can't happen for you again, the first time or again. And it really helped having, working with my thoughts. And I didn't even have all the skills that I have now at that time, but really working with my thoughts around the possibilities. And Erica, you talk so beautifully about authentic hope. And I think that this is a perfect example of authentic hope, hope backed in science, recognizing that the odds were in my favor, that it wouldn't happen again. It didn't have to happen again, and it
Yeah.
didn't happen again. And there was a lot of shame and blame about the association of neural tube defects and vitamin deficiencies. And did I do something? Is it my fault? And I started going through all of my food to see if what I was eating. And, I had all of that lab values checked and everything was normal. And so it's another thing I want to share is it's not your fault.
Mm. So
Sometimes it
powerful.
doesn't work out, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
it's just not the right time. It's not the right egg and sperm, whatever
Mm.
it is.
Mm.
And I am so grateful to have our daughter, and I know that she wouldn't be here. She's love of my life if that
Yeah.
hadn't happened. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think, I have never seen a road that was straight. I believe everybody has a story, and it's so powerful to think about you, in the early part of your career, as we do, right? We're trying to do all the things. We're trying to be the best doctor we can and pass the boards and when to start a family and how to start a family. And, sometimes things go well and sometimes things go really terribly. And I think as physicians too, we also sometimes are in situations that other non-physicians might not, that we're in situations that people might not be in otherwise. For instance, like what regular layperson is scanning themselves in an office with their husband and their toddler, like those sorts of things, because we have the skills, because it's like, oh, this is normal behavior, but it's like, that put you in a really difficult position, right? Because you were at that time both the doctor and the parent and what to do and all of those things. And so I do think that I loved how you brought up that like all of your thoughts were like some thoughts were doctor thoughts and some thoughts were mom thoughts, and really trying to sort out. And then, when there's an obstruction to what you need done, for your own safety and trying to advocate in such a vulnerable position. Like it all makes so much sense thinking about the people who I serve, who my patients and my clients who are truly fighting for their fertility every single day. So, what you mentioned skills that you have now that you did not have then. What do you like? What do you wish had been accessible to you from a thought perspective, from a just sort of obviously you did what you could then, but like what do you know now that you wish you could tell younger Robyn, like in retrospect?
Yeah. Wow. I have so many skills now. Thousands, maybe. you know? Oh, yes, yes. But I think that, being able to understand that you can feel better in any given moment, you just need to learn how. And that you don't have to take a yoga class that's an hour long to do it. There are ways you can work with your anatomy and physiology that are very quick. And when you practice them, they build up neuroplasticity and work even faster so that when you are out of balance, when your heart's palpitating, when you are sweaty, when you are shaky, when you just are not yourself, when your sympathetic nervous system is on overdrive, you can actually bring yourself back into balance quickly, easily, and effectively. And it's not only about feeling better, but understanding that our stress, our chronic stress, is the number one cause of most chronic diseases in the world: hypertension, diabetes, stroke, cancer, heart attacks, dementia, and so on. And so, doing it not only allows us to feel better, we don't have to put on our big girl pants and say, I'm just going to suck it up, but we realize that we're putting it in the bank so that we will prevent future illness. And that's something that I never really knew. And so, one, we have tools that we can feel better when we're feeling stressed out body wise, which I find is helpful to first get into balance before we start to work with our thoughts. And I know you are a life coach and understand so much about that thought work. I have found that it's very difficult to work with our thoughts. And I have clients come to me and they've had life coaches and they say, it's just not working. And I think the problem is that they're starting with the thoughts. And we have 60,000 thoughts per day, most of them not so nice, many on repeat. We
Yeah.
can't possibly work with them until we're calm in our bodies most of the time. And so, what I've learned over the years is to find that calm in your body first, and then you can create space in your mind. And then the thought work is so much more effective and so
Mm-hmm.
much more powerful. So that's really helpful. And then the other lifestyle medicine pillars, I never knew that food creates mood. I never knew
Mm.
that when you eat foods that you're craving when you're stressed, things full of added sugar and saturated fats. I mean, who here picks up a piece of celery when they're stressed out? Nobody, right? No, you want cookies and ice cream and cake and french fries and all these things. And so I never knew how much food mattered to your emotions, and that the very thing you're craving, because your body doesn't know the difference between a real emergency and when your brain's telling you, those things make you feel more anxious and stressed. Added sugar,
Mm-hmm.
saturated fats, all those chemicals that you can't pronounce, they increase anxiety, stress, and depression. And
Mm.
so, really paying attention to the food choices that I'm making. If I want to eat ice cream, is it because I just want to have it and enjoy it as dessert, with my friends and my family? Or am I craving it because I'm so stressed out and my body thinks it needs that immediate energy, that sugar, right? But it's only going to make me feel worse. So I think understanding the relationship between food and emotions was something I had never learned. And that was really
Mm-hmm.
huge. And sleep, right? We're like, oh, I'll catch up on the weekend, I'll catch up on my vacation. And amazing things happen when you sleep. So many amazing things. And when we don't sleep, we feel more anxious and stressed, which makes us not sleep. And so we have this vicious cycle, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
who knew that sleep was medicine, right? And then friendships, community, people. That was never a prescription. Now we're talking about social prescribing, understanding that we need each other. You and I having this conversation is actually good for our health, right?
Totally.
So having community, all of these things are so, so good. And so I think that I didn't know any of these things. I've learned them along the way, and I incorporate all of this in the education that I provide others in all the different ways that I teach.
It's so beautiful. So I'm thinking about the things you shared, right? So you said, those in the moment regulation, tools. So decreases the sympathetic tone, increasing the parasympathetic tone, breathing, getting into our bodies, how important that is. And those are accessible tools to us. They're not that hard, but it takes intention. I think we have to remember that they are available to us, right? And remember to pull them out when they can be useful to us, right? So we practice. I heard you say you meditate. I find meditation so helpful. And when I regularly meditate, as I do, I find that my breath is much more easily accessible to me. Would you say the same is true for you? Yeah.
Absolutely. There's
Yeah.
this mind body bi-directional conversation that's happening. And sometimes it comes from the body that calms and then it can calm your mind. Sometimes you're calming your mind and it can calm your body. And so there's this two-way conversation that's happening.
Yeah, and I was listening. So I was at the American Society of Reproductive Medicine conference about a couple of weeks ago, as the time of this recording, and this expert in the field about mind body medicine and sort of the psychology of going through the fertility journey was talking about these mini moments and when to do them. And she was saying, as you're about to get your blood drawn at the fertility clinic, which happened every other day at least, right? As you are walking through the door of your fertility clinic, even that in and of itself can be triggering. As you see the phone number from the clinic come through, and you're just like you were waiting for your news about your boards, like waiting for the news about the estrogen, the progesterone, that result that's going to determine the next steps, whether you move forward or whether your cycle is canceled. All those things are great times to say, okay, I'm going to regulate my nervous system in the moment. And this sympathetic tone does not have to be so out of balance with the parasympathetic tone, right? We can actually change that significantly.
Yeah, I love talking about preventing and relieving stress. And that's what you're talking about. Sometimes we're preventing it because we know we're going into a potentially stressful situation, all the different scenarios you just gave, and other scenarios in our life. Maybe you're walking into a stressful conversation. The holidays are coming up. Maybe you're walking into a stressful situation with family, and so on. And sometimes when you know that you are going to be in a situation that can be or will be stressful, really regulating yourself beforehand allows you to show up so much better. And
Yeah.
you can be much more clear and speak with intention and not be reactive, be more responsive. And it's so, so good. Yeah.
It's so, so good. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think, other things you said about food as medicine affecting the mood. I did this really interesting episode with somebody who we talked about the microbiome, right? So it was with an infectious disease specialist. And I had no idea how the foods that we eat truly interact with our gut and our microbiome and create the neurotransmitters that are in our brains. I mean, it is so wild to me. And just like you, I love the science behind it to kind of understand. And so I always tell my clients, like, what you eat really matters. And have intention about sleep. We all know we're supposed to sleep, right? That's something that's not new information, but I think there's a few things, especially for female physicians, that gets in the way of that, right? So first of all, we're taught we're inhuman somehow, that our bodies don't defy the same, that they don't follow the same laws as other humans. And that's just an interesting thing. And I think probably other professions too. Like, I have my lawyer sister tells me similar things about her profession, right? That we're just sort of taught that our bodies don't play by the same rules as other people's, which is just not true. So I think the first thing is to really reinstate that we actually do need that sleep for optimal functioning. We just do. It's medicine. And then I think the second thing is to say, okay, well, then if that's the case, then how do I get that? Because a lot of our lives are not currently designed to get that sleep. We're working on research at night, or we're, preparing for that talk tomorrow. I have a rule. I don't work on a talk past a certain hour. It's a boundary. I think they're going to get my work. I am the thing, I am the talk. So, if I'm working on a talk at 11 o'clock or midnight, like that, I'm not going to bring my best self. So, Dr. Robyn, what would you say to somebody like a female physician who is overscheduled, trying to do all the things, right? Trying to be a doctor, trying to have this part-time, sort of treatment as a fertility patient. I feel like there's so much resistance to the idea that we actually can get the sleep that we need as female physicians. And so, for my patients and my clients who are holding down their busy jobs, they're trying to like do all the things. We all know that the fertility treatments are at least a part-time job, right, on the side. How do you recommend? I mean, people wake up at 4 a.m. to like go to their remote clinic, then go back to their job. Like, how do you help your people to get the sleep that they need and they deserve?
Yeah, it's so multifactorial. There are so many components to getting good sleep. And we create the sleep prescription. And it's not a medication, but it's actually really the things that you can do to help you prepare the hour before sleep, to fall asleep, to stay asleep, to wake up not tired,
Yeah.
and to not be grabbing that caffeine all day long. And we call it lifestyle medicine, the lifestyle medicine sleep prescription. We actually go through a whole series of to do's and not to do's to help with that sleep. Of
Hmm.
course, we want to get 7 to 8 hours if we can. Not everybody can, and not everybody needs that, but it's more the quality of your sleep than the quantity of your sleep that's important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And a lot of my clients wake up at 4 a.m. with their minds racing about what if this next transfer doesn't work and all those things. And I think dealing with that anxiety during the day can often be preventative in terms of, preventing those panic attacks truly in the morning, because when we can reduce the stress of the experience, when we can reframe how we think about it, which you're so good at, then I think the quality of the sleep really does improve. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And maybe there's a boundary we need to set too. Maybe it is that we don't give that talk that people are asking us to give. Maybe it is that we, tell people that maybe we take FMLA for a period of time so that we really can. So I think sometimes we need to think outside the box, and sometimes it's hard because we have to look at our identity as high achieving people, but like we deserve to be patients too. And so how can we really create those boundaries that we need to during this time so that we do get what we need? I think that's really important.
Yeah, it is really important. Saying no is saying yes to yourself. So
That's right.
definitely saying no more. I said no many times today already with
That's
my
amazing.
presentation requests and so on. They just didn't serve my greatest good.
That's
And
right.
yeah.
Yeah, or no, thank you.
No, thank you.
No,
I
thank you.
respectfully decline.
That's right. And we have to practice. We have to practice. And I think some of
Yes.
us are just like our reflexes to say yes. But I think, even today I was answering an email and you know, I noticed myself, right? That's the thing, is if we slow down, we can notice ourselves. And I thought, maybe a meeting in January is just fine. Maybe I don't need to say, how high do you need me to jump? Maybe we can slow things down and, it takes some rewiring, but I think with the strategies that you're talking about, with this intention, with this embodiment, with really listening, that it is really possible, right, to achieve these things.
Yes, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think behavior change and knowing how to create behavior change is really important. And so people had a lot of goals, a lot of things they want to do, and then they don't succeed. Forbes says that New Year's resolutions, over 80% of them fail. And
Mm.
that's because we say we want to do these things and we have these great intentions, but we don't actually even know how. So something I focus on is teaching effective behavior change. What are the steps you need to do to create effective behavior change before even attempting to implement that change? And I think that is really, really key.
That makes total sense. Yes. I mean, just that intentionality, like that, goals versus intentions, right? I think that we can have intentions and where we put our energy, our energetic alignment, that's where it's at, right? It's not in like check, 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 check. We're all good at checking boxes, but sometimes we realize like why are we even checking the boxes that we've set to check, right? Because somebody else maybe said we were supposed to check them. But when we really tune in to say, okay, why am I here on this planet? What is this stage of my life calling for? And how can I make that happen? Sometimes the check boxes are actually irrelevant. Sometimes we need a whole new set of, you know, just aspects of life that we're oriented to. And it's a whole different way to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Less is more for sure. Okay, so I want to go back to your story for a second because I think it's so very powerful. So there are people who, after you had that terrible loss, that you diagnosed yourself for God's sakes, like after that terrible experience would have said, that's too much. I'm closing that door. It's just, this could happen again. Like, I don't ever want to go through anything like that. And I see people in this situation all the time, right? Or people who maybe turn to IVF because they're like, oh, well, maybe it's going to be less likely if we can, you know, find certain embryo character. Like there's this whole thing that people go down. So can you help us understand what helped you decide to try again for another pregnancy, to sort of look that fear in the face and say, you know what, we're moving beyond? Because I think that that's where my people really are. My people have gotten a lot of bad news and their nervous system, like you talk about trauma, I think we could bring the trauma aspect in here as well, like are truly traumatized by what they've gone through, as I'm sure you were. I mean, you can't go through what you went through without having some trauma. And so how do you then say, okay, I'm going to deal with the trauma and move forward in a way that is integrated, that I even can move forward, right? Because some people just say it's too much.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think that goes back to the mommy thoughts and the doctor thoughts,
Yeah.
right? And so we have all those thoughts. And the mommy thoughts would be the one that would be like, I'm terrified this is going to happen again. I went from like a 1 in 1,000 chance to like some docs were saying 7 to 8% chance of happening again, and each time it happens, goes up higher and higher, right? And so there's that. And then the other mommy thoughts are, I want to give my son a sibling, So there were mommy thoughts on both sides of it. Then
Mm-hmm.
there are doctor thoughts. And the doctor thoughts I would have to say, my left brain needed satisfying. And that's where that authentic hope came in. Because I just love that. You said that the other day, and it just really like pinged me
Mm-hmm.
in that I needed to look at the literature. I needed to say, okay, well, I may have a 7% chance of happening again, but that means I have a 93% chance of it not happening again.
Mm-hmm.
And so looking at the big picture and talking to myself in a way that I would talk to a patient or to my best friend, but that doctor brain, looking at the medical literature, having numbers, having things that are objective, being able to see that I'm placing all of the weight in the 7% and I'm not placing the weight in the 93%, our brains have this negativity bias, and our default network is to go to the negative because your brain's trying to protect you. We understand that. If you don't try, you can't get hurt again. But the reality is, if you don't try, you are hurting.
Mm-hmm.
And when you say that the way you can absolutely positively fail, the only way you can absolutely positively fail is to not even try.
So true.
And when you think about that, again, that's that. Am I the victim? Am I the victor? I don't want to be the victim. I want to be the victor. And so having those thoughts, the doctor thoughts and the mommy thoughts, right? And pulling out the thoughts that are true, really true, based
Mm-hmm.
in science, and my heart being called, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I really think that even before I had all those coaching skills, I guess I had some intuitively, but really focusing on what could be and not just, sprinkling pixie dust on it, but really looking at the numbers and looking at what's possible. And looking as a radiologist, I can't tell you how many times I've seen fetal demise. I can't tell you how many times I had to give that news. And I can't tell you how many times people come in and show me pictures of their babies, that they had children afterwards, right? And so all that anecdotal experience as a radiologist,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that this isn't the end all be all. This is one situation, one slice of life, one piece of the pie in the whole experience of life. And it didn't have to define me. And I didn't let it.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Yeah, I love what you said that like we are hurting no matter what. And so it's like what, can we move beyond that hurt and give something a chance? Or do we stay stuck in the grief, stuck in the trauma and become the victim? And it's hard. I don't think we can do this alone. I think we need guides. I think we need communities. I think, and it sounds like you hodgepodged yours, back way back when with your family and your MFM friend and you were supported. I there's no way we can do this alone. It's just too much. It's too much. We're meant to heal in community. I really do believe that. So yeah, that's so powerful. And I can't wait to re-listen to what you said because I just know like deeply within myself that what you said is just such great wisdom and I need to listen to it again and again to like really feel that impact. So thank you so much for that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think the other thing to think about, and we know this from coaching, that our brain is frequently saying, I can't, I can't, I can't. And I have found that is that victim mentality. And when I change that to how can I? And in that situation is how can I? How
Yeah.
can I get pregnant again, attempt to get pregnant again? And if I do get pregnant again, how can I keep my head straight around around this for all these months and not
Yeah.
be freaked out and worrying. And so that's when how can I means I am going to have every test that they allow me to have. I'm going to be checking my blood levels. I'm going to be doing ultrasounds. I'm going to be doing every single thing I can to make sure that I am exactly where I need to be. Right. And so it's not to be go through this blinded. And it really helped me get in the driver's seat. And I said, the other question is, what is the worst possible thing that can happen?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The worst possible thing that can happen is this happens again. And I try again. And I thought about that and I said, yes, it's going to hurt, but that's the thing that I'm most scared about is this is going to happen again. Well, I've already been through that and I succeeded. I came out 100% on top.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when you face the thing that you're most scared about and you realize that you are capable of facing that and that you succeeded in being here and getting through it the first time, wow, that's really empowering.
Wow. Wow. What you said is so true and so wise. And I just know that there's so many people who need to hear this in this moment. And thank you so much for sharing your journey because it's just, that is so true. And I think sometimes we forget it. Our brains don't let us see it. And the more we can remind ourselves of that, that is where we find our courage. I always ask people when we start working together, what is your deepest why? Why are you on this path? And not necessarily the first answer, but like, let's take the elevator to the basement, as my mentor says, to like understand that why of like when your whole body relaxes, when that is like your deepest in your body, your deepest why. And we come back to that, right? We come back to that deepest why as the motivation. Sometimes there is repeated bad news. Sometimes there's intermittent good news and intermittent bad news. My therapist, Aunt, by the way, is like, reframe that, Erica. Say disappointing news. I'm like, okay, Auntland, you're right. So that's a shout out to my therapist, Aunt. She's right. I mean, I think we code things as good or bad. I think it's news, and there's disappointing news, and there's more encouraging news. But every single person is on this journey because they have the desire in their heart to be a parent. And when we do say, like you so wisely said, how can I? Then it becomes this abundant universe of possibilities. And that's when we figure out, okay, well, maybe it's that I need a community. Maybe it's I need a guide. Maybe it's I need to work with you and really decrease my stress and understand why this whole process has made me so activated and how I can actually start to feel better. Maybe it's the foods that I'm ingesting because I'm so busy as a hospitalist and that all that's in the hospital is graham crackers and peanut butter. Like we really start to say, how can I've learned myself that question is so powerful. And it takes us out of the victim stance and it gives us back our power. And if anything else at Love and Science, that's what I'm all about, is to figure out how we can take back our power. And I know that you believe similarly, right, in your work. So it's amazing. Yeah. Well, that was so powerful. I would love for you to share with our people anything else you feel which needs to be said. And, if that includes anything about your book or your upcoming retreat in Africa or anything like that, I just think it's so fascinating what you're doing and so novel, really, that people need to know about your work and people need to know where to find you.
Well, thank you for all that you do. I wish I would have had a doctor like you way back when, that really combined the love and the science. I think it's incredible what you're doing, and anybody who's out there that needs you and gets to have you as their doctor and their coach is so lucky. So
Thank you,
thank you for
Robyn.
everything you do. And for everyone listening, just know that you're not alone. And
Yeah.
if these things feel foreign to you that we've been talking about, um, make sure, please, to not be, saying I should know all of these things. No shoulding yourself, right? So all the things that I shared with you, I learned along the way. We did not learn them in medical school. And I think all of this should be intracurricular, but it isn't there just yet through most schools. And so don't should yourself. Just take today as a new day and really put that curiosity lens on about all the things you may have learned that we were talking about, and maybe just choosing one thing, because as female physicians we want to do all the things 150%, and when we try to do all the things at once we do nothing. And so maybe you're just choosing that one thing. And when I work with military veterans, and Navy SEALs, and our active military, one of the things they talk about all the time is 1% better every day. And so I invite you to just focus on being 1% better every day. What is
Mm.
one small thing you can do today so that you can be better tomorrow? That's all. So you don't have to do all the things we talked about right now. It's too much. Picking just one small thing, and anything you do is better than what you were doing before. And then in terms of, where to find anything about me, you can go to my website. That's www.stressfreemd.net. And it's there that you'll find everything about my podcast, the Stress Free MD podcast, the book, Feeling Stress is Optional. And as Dr. Ecker mentioned, coaching, online programs, and retreats. I've got retreats coming up both in 2026 in the US as well as in Africa in 2027. I'm heading back there. So if any of that sounds exciting and interesting to you, you can check it out and just reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Amazing. Dr. Tiger, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today and your experience as a physician who has integrated so many things to just be dynamite and to be a true healer. I think, in medical school, we really only got part of it, right? We got the cognitive piece, we got the understanding of disease. And I do think that many of us are realizing now that not for anybody's fault, but just the way the system is designed, that there's so much more healing to be had, right? We just need to keep an open mind, and we need to find the people who are going to guide us to that healing. And really, you've found your way, and your approach is so beautiful. And I'm just so grateful to know you and to know that you're doing such beautiful work in the world. I cannot wait to collaborate more. It's really so exciting to me.
Oh, I would love to. Thank you so much for all you're doing as well. And it's been an honor being here.
Absolutely. Okay, my friends, be well. I love you. Until the next time. Bye.